Otaku Mike here. Let's talk about Superman issue number 32. Why? Because it's a DC K.O. tie-in. That's so our story, surprisingly enough, starts out with a flashback. We see Lois getting the Kryptonian powers and her becoming Supergirl. And she eventually loses her powers and kind of comes to the terms that she will never be a superhero again. We jump to the present where we see Lois being a superhero, and she is fighting the Legion of Darkseid member Sunboy, who is trying to get information out of the Kryptonian archives to help Darkseid further his plans. And Lois is in shock at this point. She knocks out Sunboy, and she's in shock that she actually has her powers again. And Superboy Prime is like, look, we don't have time for this, Lois. And she's like, how did I get my powers? What's going on? He's like, we don't have time for this. We are currently in an event book at this moment. Time, continuity, and whatnot does not matter. We just need to get out here. But Lois is like, no, we need to get this information from the archives to Superman. So we actually jump over to Lex Luthor's point of view, where we see him during the events of issue 1 of DCKO, where the superheroes are trying to wrangle up all of the different supervillains and send them to the Phantom Zone. Specifically, Lex is talking to Superman. He's like, look, Superman, after everything we've been through, you could have come to me and asked me for help, but yet you were locking us away, and taking away our choice to, make change in this big event that's going on. And we see these villains get teleported away. But as always, Lex always has a contingency plan where he actually talks to Gorilla Grodd before all this is going on, and they hatch a plan to have everybody teleported. That was being teleported to the Phantom Zone, to the Legion of Doom headquarters. Still from Lex's point of view, we move over to round 2 of the event, where we see Lex talking to Superman. He's like, you know what the difference is between me and you, Superman? I can actually go the distance. I can go down to the depths of my soul and do what needs to be done to make things right. I can let my fellow, teammates fall in battle to get what I need. And Superman is like, enough is enough, Lex. You are not going to win. And he's like, Lex says, you know what's different between me and you? You are distracted by outside circumstances, while I am not. And that is why I am going to change the world and make the world a better place. She ends up switching over to the Fortress of Solitude with Prime and Lois. And Prime starts talking about how nobody invited him to the tournament. He would totally wreck shop because he is the strongest there is. And he would punch people's heads off left and right and kill people. And Lois is like, aren't you technically on a no-kill rule, reformed at this moment? He's like, yeah, I guess I am. Hey, I actually know where we are. And he takes off flying, leaving Lois alone. And who happens to wake up but the Legion of Darkseid members that they had knocked out. And we see Sunboy talking to Lois. He's like, you can honor Darkseid and become one with the Legion by killing the multiverse brats. And Lois is like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Are you crazy? And she goes to looking for Prime, but she can't find Prime at this moment. And she's like, I gotta hold things off because we cannot let them get this information. And who happens to show up but Prime and Superman himself? So the three of them actually fight off the Legion of Darkseid members that are in the Fortress of Solitude. Surprisingly, they win. Who knew? And Lois is in shock that Superboy Prime actually got to Clark so fast. And she goes to touch him and reaches for him, and we find out that this Clark is a cyborg, which Lois jumps to conclusions and thinks, this is Cyborg Superman, and what the heck are you doing with Cyborg Superman? He's a bad guy. But we find out that this is actually a robot that Clark built back in the day, and we're going to use this army of Superman robots to get this information about Darkseid and Doomsday to the Time Trapper. So let's take a look at the internal artwork for this issue. The artwork is still just as good as issue number 1, I have to say. Probably even stronger at some points with like all the action stuff and like the color and the energy. Uh, uh, like it's really, really well done. With what little fight scenes we actually do get in here, we do get a lot of regurgitation from parts of DCKO issues 1 and 2 in this, just from Lex Luthor's point of view. But they do a very good job of recreating what happened in those issues. And adding some new interesting events in here. But yeah, awesome, awesome. I love actually the depiction of the Joker in this. He was actually kind of creepy to see him in here, which I thought maybe from the looks of it, he had like his face removed, like when he had his face removed at that one point, but he didn't. But yeah, awesome. The line work is spectacular. This book is laid out pretty well. I love that they showed like Superman and Lex's upcoming fights and showed that off with the demon, which I'm really excited for the demon to show up in this. But yeah, awesome, awesome artwork. You can't go wrong with this creative team. It's superb. So, what exactly did I think of issue number 32 of Superman? Well, it was actually a fun read for the most part. It does a really good job of moving the story forward with Prime and Lois. That is the big focus that I attached to in this story, was their like ongoing weird buddy cop adventure to get the Kryptonian archive information to the time trapper and stuff, which I really did like. It was fun. Like it made me chuckle at points to see Superboy Prime kind of break the fourth wall, but not in like an annoying Deadpool way. But he was still within the walls because he didn't technically break the fourth walls. He was just referencing things, I guess, in his universe or whatever, which it was really funny. Where I feel like this book kind of fell flat or just kind of stopped like the momentum of the story, which I understand why the creative team did this to fill in a bunch of plot holes and stuff with things going on with DCKO issue 1 and 2, was the stuff with the villains. How did the villains get into this? And they do a decent job of filling in those gaps, and it did answer some questions like how did they get out of the Phantom Zone where they weren't in the Phantom Zone to begin with. But I was just kind of like, did we really need that? I don't know. It just, to me, it was just an okay like plot line, which maybe they're going to continue with Lex's plot line in this, which it was just okay. I just felt like Lex got really upset that Superman did not ask him for some help. And he basically put him in prison. Lex is kind of a sore loser, I feel like. Not going to lie. But it did really shake things up at the end. We find out, which got me really excited, was the army of Superman robots that Superboy Prime gathers. Because I was like, oh my god, they're bringing Cyborg Superman into this. Oh, I can't deal with this right now. Which he was over there in the question book like months ago, as well as the Eradicator was in that too. So I was like, oh my god, they're bringing him back. Maybe we'll get Superboy from the 90s too, and Steel. Steel will be in this book. But alas, I was disappointed. It's just a bunch of robot Superman, which are cool, and I really wanted to see where that plot point goes with the next issue and going forward. Like, what are they gonna do with that, and what are they gonna do with all this information? That is probably the highlight of like reading more of this. I want to know what they're gonna do with it and how this story is gonna end. But I would love to hear your thoughts down below. I'm Otaku Mike. Peace out. Stay safe. Go read some comic books.